Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show, where we are talking to Senior Account Manager of JWB, Mike Stewart, who is really the guy with the strategy of building the $450 million real estate portfolio that JWB's got going on. I was going to say there's going to be one lucky person on Thursday, but today we're all lucky to have you, Greg Cohen, in the house for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. We are live on Facebook right now. I am your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the guy that generates cash flow with his genius concepts. He's a great co-host, and they call him GC because his name is Greg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
Hello, everybody. Great to be with you.
And the star of the show, he is the Senior Account Manager, the guy that puts together the strategy for everybody coming on, that sets them up for long-term wealth creation. He is the guy that has architected the long-term success of this $450 million portfolio. His name is Mike Stewart. Say hello, Mike.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on board, my friend. Good to have you on board. We're going to get into it real soon. I see people trickling in already. The chat's already blowing up. We're seeing our friends and family here at the Not Your Average Investor Show. Nadeem, good to see you. Lee, good to see you. Dean, I think you may be new here. If I'm not sure, it's good to see you as well. John Henning, welcome, everybody. Edward Tudino calling you out. Stewie and Leo is in the house. Good to have everybody here. This is an interactive show. We want you asking questions. We're going to go over the keys to building this long-term portfolio. Mike is going to talk about the way that he onboards people, and then we're going to do kind of a little demo, right? Like, I am a new client. We're going to work through it and use me as the noble fool that doesn't know what's going on, because I don't, right? So I'm going to really rely on Mike's expertise here. Hello, Sergio. Hello, Marilyn. Good to see you. So for those of you that are new, if this is your first time joining us, interactive. We want you chiming in, and you already see the chat blowing up, right? That is one way that you can contribute to the show, contribute to each other. There's a little trick there when you go to type something in the chat, it's defaulted to only talk to me, Mike, and Greg. So not everybody else gets to see it. That blue button that says panelists, you got to hit that and change it to panelists and attendees so that you can make a new friend. You can network in the chat. You can share your wisdom. We're here to collaborate. And if you want to ask a question on the show about your specific portfolio, or how you want to approach it, you want to ask Mike something, you want to ask Greg something, you want to ask me something, use the Q&A function. That is ideal. You pop that open on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and that makes it so that question stays there for me, and it doesn't just fly up and down the panel. If not, I may go cross-eyed and I start mumbling my speech, and I don't really know what I'm talking about. I may speak Spanish. You never know. So, and if you need next steps, you want our ROI calculator tool, right? Like stuff that Mike is saying makes sense. You want to start calculating what it looks like on certain rental income properties. Go to JWBROI.com.
You nailed it, brother.
Yeah, I knew it. I was super confident.
No .org, no .net, the .com. We went big time for that one.
All right. I got it, though. I got it. JWBROI.com. You download the calculator that we always tinker with on the Thursday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. You're going to be able to analyze all your real estate deals in that way going forward. Without further ado, I'm going to start off with Greg. I thought you weren't going to be here today. What's going on? Update us. How do we get this special thing? I thought it was going to be just me and Mike.
Yeah. So like I was saying, this golf tournament went off, I'm telling you, without a hitch. We had everybody coming up to us and saying, you guys have done such a great job. The team element was there. The whole 80 people force that we are at JWB was out there and helping and driving food to players, and everything came together. We had folks that had been there every single year telling us that this was the best year. We had new folks who were saying this was the most fun. I mean, I can't tell you how hard the team worked, and it was amazing. There was one thing that we couldn't control, though, and it wasn't the weather on Monday that got us. The weather on Tuesday, today, got us. Today was actually supposed to be the day that we were going to do the home donation and get to meet the veteran and have him be able to walk through the threshold of his brand new construction home. There's a lot of AV equipment outside when we do these things. The news is there, the media is there. We have our own videography teams and whatnot. And so we decided, because it's raining right now in Jacksonville, to actually postpone that to a day when it's going to be bright and sunshiny. So that actually is going to be delayed. We're gonna have to wait a few more days. It'll actually be next Monday now is the day that we're actually going to have the ceremony and the home donation. So we'll continue to keep you all posted. We've waited this long to make this, to change this individual's life. So we got a few more days of waiting.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, if I can speak from experience in the tournament yesterday, man, it really did have a special feel. Like it had somewhat the feel that we have here, but people congregating together, socially distanced, of course. But when you're driving into a golf course and there's a lineup of bubbly, bright, intelligent people waving everybody in and passing them in, you're already just like, I'm in something special here. And then just every interaction I had yesterday, from employee, team member to service provider to the country club staff, right? Like it was all so extraordinarily positive. Really, really great experience. Mike, what was your experience like at the golf tournament, man?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I got to play. So, I mean, we put a ton of work in as a team, and then I got to kind of reap the benefits of that. So it was a blast. I mean, I think the same thing. I was talking to a teammate of ours, Talitha, on our property management team, and I think she put it best. She just said, "Hey, it's just all the feels, right? I mean, and yeah, I mean, you feel proud, you feel, emotional as far as what we're doing for people. You're having a blast with your teammates. So it was just really a perfect and truly special day."
Yeah, totally agree, man. Total testament to the team and what the flywheel of JWB just and contribution to society, which is great. But that is not what we're here for today. That was a fun time. That was yesterday. Mike, we want to hear about your experience, man. How did you get to JWB? How did you get to this position? And tell me what makes you tick, man. What do you love about what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so this is year 5 for me with the team. I had a financial services background prior to this, and was leaving that field and had to figure out where I wanted to go when I grew up. So at that point in time, I actually interviewed to be what we call today a portfolio manager, a leasing agent. Excuse me. I actually interviewed as a leasing agent, and they said, "No, I don't feel like that's going to be the best fit for you." So I landed on the portfolio management team, and they're still my favorites. Sorry to the rest of the team, but love those guys, so that's where I learned, this company, this business. Ultimately helped to co-manage with Miss Lauren Alleman, who I'm sure a lot of you folks know, and she does a wonderful job. And then they realized that, hey, I've got experience, I can talk to people, and everything kind of comes naturally in terms of onboarding. And that's where I shifted into my current position as a senior account manager, where I've been for the last 2+ years. So really been kind of a cool ride throughout the company, whether it was intentional or not. It worked out, and really has put me in a good place. So when I'm talking with people, for the very first time, I feel like I can truly give them a realistic picture as to what they can expect when working with our team.
That makes a lot of sense coming from that side, to be able to like contextualize what coming from the step after makes you be able to set it up for success in the step prior, right? Instead of coming from the step before, you don't know. It makes a lot of sense, man. So what's a day in the life of what you're doing? Like what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, I'm really talking with people, in a variety of different parts of the spectrum, I guess, Pablo. People that are greener than green, that really don't know much about real estate. They just know that they're excited about it and want to get started, to savvy veterans as well. I usually tell folks that, people are coming to JWB in one of two camps. Either they need that experience, the boots on the ground here, and that's why they're coming to us, or it's a time value of money proposition, right? So it's hey, I know a lot about this. Technically, could I set up camp in Jacksonville and try to figure this out tomorrow? Sure. But then we look at comparative advantage and what the best use of everybody's time is. And if they allow us to do what we do really well, it frees them up to do what they do really well, and everybody wins at the end of the day. So, the other thing we'll talk about in a little bit is just kind of the multifaceted approach we take to client onboarding. It's not just, hey, show me your list of properties, we'll pick one and we'll figure it out. It's very intentional, very thoughtful, and the planning is definitely a big part of it, which we'll get to in a little bit.
We will get to that, man. And we're going to do kind of like a live demo of that. But, what's the number one thing that you are trying to accomplish when you're on these calls, Mike? I know that you have some ideas around like what works and what doesn't, but like what's like the key thing for success where you feel like you had a call with somebody?
Yeah, I think anytime we have a breakthrough in terms of realistic expectations, Pablo, right? I think that's my job is twofold, is to make sure that, what we do is truly a good fit for you, short and long term. But at the same token, we're going to be talking to each other every month for the next 10 plus years. So we want to make sure that, we like each other and that it's a fit for you too. So if I can give a realistic set of expectations as to not only what to expect in terms of, the numbers and the performance of these assets, but also, what it's going to be like to interact with my team, then everybody wins in that particular scenario. And sometimes that's a, hey, we don't do this particularly well type of a situation. If you come to me and you're saying, hey, Mike, I want 11% cash on cash, cool. It's just not going to be my market, right? At the end of the day. And if you can find it, good on you, right? But at the same token, being real with what they can expect, both in terms of numbers and logistics, I think that's, anytime we get those aha moments and abilities to speak candidly, I think everybody wins.
Stewie, I wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit, because you coming from the service background and being a manager on that side, I think is an incredible asset to people who are coming in and buying new properties. What would you say is maybe the biggest misconception, or maybe the biggest, aha moment, specifically from the service perspective, or maybe going into the property management relationship, because largely that's what you're going to do on the service side? What do you think people kind of have misconceptions about?
I think the biggest, Greg, is probably what being passive truly means, right? When we're talking about experiences, with clients, and I'll get these questions sometimes. They'll say, hey, Mike, tell me when didn't it work? Right? What were the challenges that you ran into? And I think those challenges tend to be predominantly when people say they're ready to be passive and end up not being. So I think, from a service standpoint, the ability to trust my team to, vet your residents and screen and make sure we're doing a great job in finding people for your homes, right? Maintenance items, that we're truly putting your best interests first and getting multiple quotes and getting the best pricing for you. All those little things that we're doing behind the scenes, if you're not truly ready to let go and let our team do it, that can be a challenge for some folks. So, one of the things that we ask a lot about is, tell me what passive looks like for you, because it's different for everybody. It's a very subjective kind of feel, right? At the end of the day. So making sure that we just talk about that openly, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, again, sets everybody else up for success.
That makes sense, Matt. Listen, coming from, and we're about to head into, full disclosure here. I'm a service provider to JWB, and as the personality on the show that gets to interview everybody and seeing all these success cases, I, about a month ago, closed on my own investment property with JWB, right? I've been convinced for a while. I just have to scrap it all together and make it happen, right? So I totally get it. When you're talking about passive, man, one of the biggest things is, we talk about the service department all the time. I didn't realize how passive I get to be with the management of the money, right? Like the idea that I have a monthly call with somebody that is showing me this interface where every dollar is being spent, and extrapolate this for 20 years later. It's like, oh, I need that plumbing bill from like 1992, and just be able to pull it up, and somebody can do it for you, kind of thing, right? Like yesterday at the golf tournament, I was talking to the insurance provider, and a couple of things are changing with insurance. And they were like, oh, hey, we got to talk to you about this. Like, why am I talking to you? I'm just going to call your portfolio manager and make that happen, right? Like that weight off of my head was huge, man. And I know some people are much more like active with their money, but for me, it's like the last thing I need is another thing in the mail that I need to like worry about whether I opened or not. And that really redefined passive for me. Do you find that people are surprised by that?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent. Typically I'll tell them, hey, if we're doing our job well, you're going to spend 4 or 5 hours a year on your portfolio. And I think we all, get that chuckle like, oh, okay, we'll see if that's really going to happen. And then lo and behold, you spend 4 or 5 hours a year, and most of it is just a simple check-in with your portfolio manager each and every month, just reassuring you that we've got everything, locked down. So yeah, I think, sometimes saying is one thing, doing is something else. So until you get into it, until you do it, you don't realize the true benefit and what it's really going to be like.
Love it. Saying is one thing, doing is totally something else. You guys are doers. All right. So let's do this, right? So we're talking about, that's the back end. Now we're going to use me as the test monkey for how you kind of like figure out how to build a portfolio. Like I said, I just closed on a property. If you want to start sharing whatever you're going to share, I just closed on a property and I'm looking to build my long-term portfolio. How do we get started here, Mike?
Yeah, and let me back up just about 3 steps before that, Pablo, if you don't mind. When we look at how we would work with somebody for the very first time, it's very, like I'd mentioned before, it's intentional. It's a series of steps typically to cover all the information that we need to cover, because there's a lot to this in terms of what to inspect, in terms of numbers, what to expect from my market, what to expect from my team, right? Those 3 things are several calls worth of information. So you can see right away, I mean, we just take it's not transactional, right? We care, we want to make sure that we understand this. So as a team, we made the decision, when was it, Greg? Middle of last year, probably, to start incorporating this planning aspect into the onboarding process. Now, we're not perfect, for the record. We don't catch everybody, but at the same token, we'll get you, even if you did buy a property and we haven't walked you through it yet. Between either myself, the other Mike, or the service team, it's something that we do within your first year of being here with us. It's that important. So the planning piece is really important on the front end, Pablo, because of the fact that it just gives me a fighting chance, right? As far as why we're doing this and what we're trying to accomplish. Going back to that realistic set of expectations, right? In terms of what can my market do and what can it do? I mean, we're pretty finite in terms of the numbers and what will work. So we want to make sure that that's a fit. And it helps us just to have the best strategy. I think sometimes, you being an investor, you're going to have kind of a set of thoughts and preconceived notions going into it. I'm going to have the same thing, right? But if we can put our heads together at the end of the day, we're going to just be better off for it. And oftentimes we end up learning from each other, which is really cool at the end of the day, trying to find different ways to be the most efficient that we possibly can in putting this plan together. So on the front end, it really helps to make sure that we're all moving in that same direction in terms of implementation. But then I think the biggest thing that it does is it just sets our team up for success on the back end, because oftentimes people are not, buying 3 houses and then done, right? Type of a situation, or 5 houses and done. This is the initial, and then they're going to work over the next several years to complete their plan. So your portfolio managers are working on that. And naturally, what I set up with you on the front end, or what the other Mike sets up with you on the front end, your portfolio manager is driving the bus on the back. So it just kind of puts us all in one complete circle to make sure that, again, everything is realistic in terms of expectations, but that we're all on the same page in terms of the overall plan.
You handled that like a real pro, like if you've done that before, right? I know that as a host, I should have set you up to actually, ask that question. And then I realized I was so excited to talk about my plan that I was already going to 100 miles an hour. I'm assuming this happens all the time, right? Like people come in there with their own ideas.
We just slow it down, brother. It's fine.
Yeah.
Take a couple steps back. We'll get there, right? You're excited to buy a house. You're excited to build this plan. Okay, pump the brakes. No, it's totally good. But that's sometimes, again, you just have to make sure that we're all speaking the same language at the end of the day.
I'll kind of add on there too. I mean, this idea of doing the buying plan came from listening to our clients and from listening to people that were just starting to engage with JWB, because you sort of have different kind of tiers that you get to, right? You first kind of establish interest in this model and try to understand the team you want to work with and the market, and see how the numbers work. And once that kind of clicks and you're like, oh, wow, I see how this works. I see how it can be easy. The numbers make sense. Your next question is, okay, well then how much should I do? And how should I do it? And how long should I do this for? Right? Because at the end of the day, we're here to accomplish a goal, a monthly passive income goal that's going to be something that's going to really improve your life. We're not here to just buy houses in perpetuity for no reason, right? So this came from that question that was being asked to our team often, right? I have this pile of money then that I want to put into rental property investing with JWB. How can we financially engineer this to be able to produce the best return on investment, or to decrease your time to getting to that monthly passive goal? And once we started to basically systemize that process, that's when it became something that we could really help our current clients out with. That's where it started. For many years, it was only done with current clients. right? Stewie,
Yeah.
we're part of the architects for actually how to build this out and replicate this for current clients. And really about a year and a half ago, we said, well, now that that is so dialed in, I bet this would be a huge value add for anybody who's not even a client yet. And now that's where this lives for anybody. You don't even have to be a client now. And Mike Stewart and others are going to go through this process with you, which is really, really cool.
That's awesome, man. So Anthony Dida puts here, Lee, I had a similar, because Lee made a comment earlier. He said, Anthony said he had a similar experience working with Mike. Initially, I wanted 4, but then went to 2 at first and purchased my 3rd last July. The process is amazingly simple, which I like. Purchased a primary residence here in Jupiter, Florida around the same time, and it was the exact opposite. I kept asking, why is this so
Sorry, Anthony.
Love it, Tony.
Yeah. Greg said something, right? People are like, I want to buy this many houses. Are people coming to you saying that they want to buy houses, or are people coming to you saying, I want to have a certain amount of return based on a certain amount of risk? Like, are people looking at this as an asset class, or are they still thinking about like, it's real estate, I want to buy a house? Like how educated is the average person coming in on the difference between buying a house and investing in an asset class?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of different scenarios. I mean, I get people that'll come and they're looking specifically for targeted cash flow. I'll get people that are looking to target an allocation to real estate, so more of the asset class type of a conversation. I have a lot of people that just say, I want to buy 3 houses, right? Or I want to buy a house, or I want to buy 5 houses, whatever the number is. And sometimes they have rhyme or reason to it. Other times it's more emotionally driven. So I think it's all over the board, Pablo. But I mean, you know, when we talk about, you know, the first thing that we try to do is really establish what your purpose is, what's your why, right? And you'll hear that a lot in our business because it's important for us as a company, us as individuals, and you guys as clients, right, or potential clients, to know what your why is. And if we can figure out what the purpose is, what's driving you, and then challenging you just a step further, right, to figure out, how do we quantify that, right? So if my goal is retirement, or my goal is a travel fund, or whatever it may be, what does that need to be? And what do we need to be responsible for here in Jacksonville? And once we have those 2 things, then we're off to the races from there. We've got some real data that we can work with and move on.
That makes a lot of sense, man. So Dean Curry put here in the chat, what is the process cost to set up a foreign entity in Florida for my business to own real estate? Is that something you get often? Do you mind answering that real quickly before we continue down the path of mine?
You want to grab it, Greg, or you want me to?
You know, my answer is probably going to be, I'd have to check on what the actual cost would be to set up a foreign entity. It's not much, but you know, I don't have a lot of specific information on that one, other than I know we're 1 phone call away and we could get that information for you quickly.
I mean, I don't even know what
you're going to have.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. I think I'm lagging just a smidge, but no, when we look at foreign entities, typically, you know, you're going to have the initial filing, which if you do it through a, you know, online legal entity, it'll probably be a couple $100. If you use a formal attorney to do it, it's probably a few $1,000s. And then you've got filing fees each year for that, you know, entity in particular. So, you know, a few $1,000 on the high end, I would guess, to get it started, and then probably a few $100s a year to keep it maintained.
There you go. And wisdom of the community, Raja Bantu coming in saying $125 to register in Florida as a foreign entity, and UBR of $138 a year. All right, great, good stuff. So, all right, so Mike, so we were talking about whys. Is this the part of the conversation where you'd be asking me my why, or are we being conceptual here?
Let's do both. I think I was trying to be conceptual, but we can lead right into working with you, Pablo. So let me share with you real quick as far as kind of the tool that we use internally. Are we good? Can you guys see JWB client buying plan?
Oh, we can
mouse
see
moving around.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So when we look at this is typically what I would send you as homework, Pablo, right? So if we're to the point that we're moving forward, we agree that it makes sense to work together, and ultimately we want to work towards property selection. One of the first things that we do is we pause to plan. So I would send this to you, and you'll notice down here on the bottom, we've got 2 tabs, right? We've got just a client info tab, and then we have a client buying plan tab. On the info tab, that's really your homework. And when you look at a big picture plan, I think sometimes people try to make it a lot harder than it needs to be. per se. So we really try to simplify it down to 4 things. So number 1, what is your why, right? Why are we doing this? What's your driver? Number 2, what does that why look like in terms of dollars? Number 3, how many properties will we need to get home for that particular plan? And then number 4, how in the heck are we going to get there? Right. So once we have those 4 types of things, then we can get into the second tab here. And when we look at this, this is where we have fun with it. We've got a variety of different things going on. But really, at its core, it's very, very simple. So when we look at this, I mean, let's start with you, Pablo. When we're talking about the first thing that we need to check off, when you're looking at rental properties and the income that you're going to derive, what's the purpose for those dollars? If you close your eyes, you flash forward 10 years from now, you open them, what are you spending that money on?
I don't spend a lot of money, right? Like now that I live here in Jacksonville and I've built up I came here because I love to surf and I know that I can do it here, right? And that doesn't really cost a lot of money, right? So like I like hanging out with people, I like surfing. And to be honest, my main want in this asset class is this idea that if I can create around $7,000 a month in passive income, that means that my wife and I, whether my business is going well or she just gets a terrible boss or whatever, we're not beholden to our careers, right? That's kind of where I'm at. I want the flexibility to be like, if I want to start a business from scratch and it's going to take me 3 years to live off of it, I have this like base fundamental kind of like income to live off of. And I know that I can accomplish that somewhere between $5,000 to $7,000 a month and not live lavishly, but also I'm not like starving or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, basically, if we had to add a third thing here, I mean, probably financial independence, freedom, whatever you want to call it, choices, right? So
yeah.
The ability to say,
I like to call my own shots,
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at this, I mean, I think that's very simply put, and you're not alone. I mean, I think we get a lot of clients that are very happy with their current job, some that are not so happy, and that's okay too. But they want to get to that point where, if they say, hey, I'm going to walk away completely, if I want to dial it back to part-time, if I want to go surf, right? I mean, I want the ability to have that true independence, that true freedom, the choices to be able to do that if I want to. And the faster that I can get there, the better. So that's awesome, man. I think that's exactly, how I'd approach it. Now, why 7,000? I mean, when you're looking at that relative to income, I know that's what you started off with, but where does that number come from?
Costs, right? Like I know that's kind of where right around $5,500 a month is my like baseline costs here in Jacksonville. And I know that if I can build in an extra $1,500 a month, I'm like relatively comfortable and not, I can go out to dinner with Greg and his wife every once in a while, like it's not that big a deal.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be the number that's going to give you the freedom for those choices. Okay. So love that. Now to get a little bit more granular with it, Pablo, right? So if we're looking at $7,000, is that all coming specifically from passive income in real estate? Is it coming from multiple sources? I mean, kind of tell me where you envision that 7K coming from, short and long term.
I'm not really that far down the pipe, right? Like I know that I need to make the 7,000. I haven't really decided if I want it to all come from real estate. I'm kind of enamored with the idea. Like I'm a fan, right? So like I haven't heard anybody tell me of like a consistent cash flow source that I like as much as how this all sounds, I guess is what I would say. But I'm not married to the idea that it all has to come from rental properties.
Okay. Well, in either way, I mean, I think 7,000 is an attainable goal right out of the gate. Now, I'll talk to you about why in a second, but I do recognize that while we would love to have 100% of everybody's portfolio, does that make a heck of a lot of sense? And oftentimes, the answer to that question is no, right? So, whether it's coming from multiple sources, if I'm invested in the stock market, if I have other businesses that are kicking off, what I tend to find, Pablo, is that, if I look at a total goal of 7,000, normally, we're going to be a portion of that. Sometimes we'll be all of it, but it just kind of depends on each particular individual. So for now, let's just assume 7,000, the number, we'll leave it up there. because this gets us to kind of our critical part here as far as number of properties. So you'll notice here that it's pre-populated as 9. And I know we'll get a lot of questions as far as where that comes from and how we approach that. Before we do that, any questions so far? Does this all make sense?
I don't have a question right now, but I have a question for a friend. Nadeem Shah asks,
Yeah.
Can this form client buying plan be sent ahead of time so the client fills it up and have it ready for when the time comes to make an offer on the rental property?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. And it's something that we do before we even look at live properties together. So absolutely, we send it prior to, you guys fill it out. And then normally what will happen is by the time we talk live, this is all going to be pre-filled. And then we go through it together. We pick it apart. We poke holes in it. Do we like it? Do we want to keep it? Do we want to change it? But ultimately, when we get done with this planning call, the goal is that we both walk away with a plan that we feel comfortable and confident in, you in terms of what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there, and then obviously us being able to deliver for you.
Cool. And then the last thing is, I think we're having a little bit of issue with resolution. Do you think you can unshare and reshare and see if it works a little bit better?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Hang on just a second.
You got it.
Yeah, I'd love some feedback from the audience on that too, because it was a little blurry for me for a few seconds, but then it came back and it's pretty crystal clear on my end. So for all those out there, if it's clear for you when we reshare here, go ahead and let us know.
Let us know in the chat.
Okay, I just updated it, guys. Did you have any difference on your end?
It's looked good for me from the beginning, so I don't know.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Tony,
Okay.
good? All right, so we'll rock with it. All right, so now that we figured out our why, right? We understand the purpose. We've got our dollar amount. Then it's really a question of how many properties does this take to get home? And the cool thing about this is that, you can really take this to any market, guys, as far as kind of this basic exercise. So the first question that I always ask is, number one, what's your average rent? So across our 3,800 doors at the moment, it's right around $1,150. Let's call it his average rent per month. And then the subsequent question is okay, what do I clear after my fixed expenses? So after I've paid my taxes and I've paid my insurance and I've paid property management fees, what am I clearing per door on those particular homes, right? And for us, the number tends to fall anywhere between $800 and $900 a month. So if I'm buying a property outright, no mortgages, right, I can assume that I'm going to land somewhere between 800 and 900. So for us as a team, we've kind of collectively said, hey, let's go with the conservative angle and go 800 per month. So if you take your basic goal, Pablo, of 7,000, right, I divide it by 800, that tells me I'm going to need 8.75 houses, right? Unfortunately, Greg and I haven't figured out how to sell you 0.75 houses yet. So we're going to go with 9, my friend, but that's going to get us to our goal when the mortgages are paid, right? So I think sometimes people will look at it through the other lens of, well, what does that same property typically clear with a mortgage in place? And normally that's going to be about $200 a month, right? A lot of our properties falling anywhere from $200 to $300 a month in net cash flow after mortgage and fixed expenses. I caution you to do it that way though. And the reason that I do that, right, Pablo, is if I take your same $7,000 goal and I divide it by $200 per month, how many properties do you need, man, to hit your goal?
I did that a little while ago and it was a ton. Like it seemed unattainable.
35, right? Yeah. So, with down payments and closing costs, that's going to get frustrating in a hurry. And you're probably going to end up, not probably, you will end up with way too many houses if you ultimately get to that goal of 35 properties. So the way that we look at it is that you want to go from the point of what is the least amount of properties that I need to hit my goal at some point in the future. And you do that by looking at net cash flow after fixed expenses. So for us, we use that $800. Okay. And that's where we're getting to 9. Now, if we can add more, obviously that's great. But I think the biggest thing for people to understand is when we set this goal of 9 here, this is our initial sprint goal, right? It's our current milestone, we call it, because it's where we're at currently. When we get to 9 properties, we'll pause, we'll reevaluate and make sure that 7,000 is still your goal, Pablo, that 9 properties is still the actual number that we need to be on. And if we're there and that's still it, awesome. We get a chance to throw a little confetti and call it a portfolio complete. If we need to keep going, we can keep going. But that's where, the fluidity of this plan is also something that's really neat. I mean, the fact that what we set up today isn't necessarily, carved into tablets per se. So once we have this, then it's really, we know why we're doing this. We know how much we need. We know how many properties it's going to take to do that. Then it's really about how in the heck do we get there, right? And this, I think, sometimes is where we come from with a realistic angle, because I think sometimes people get really excited, but when we just do the math and look about how we're going to get there, we really want to know what's reasonable and what's not. So in terms of initial capital to invest, this is really important because this tells us how we start. But at the same token, what's realistic annually, right? And I think everybody's situation is different. We've got a lot of folks out there that, save like crazy from personal savings, and that's awesome. They're able to squirrel away $25,000 a year or $70,000 a year, whatever the number may be. Others are triggered by kind of life events, right? They're selling a particular property and diversifying into Jacksonville. Some people are doing a 1031 exchange in that same format. Some people have changed jobs, right? And they're utilizing assets that were with their old employer to be able to leverage. So a variety of different things can trigger both of those. So for you, I mean, kind of tell me where you're at, and if you're comfortable, obviously, because you're in front of the world here, my friend, initial capital, and then, what do you want to fill in here as far as additional, and again, be realistic with where you think you can land.
Yeah, man, I'd say I have capital that I want to use to invest. I am somewhere around $40,000 right now that I have. That is, in transparency, it's some stock that I have that was $49,000 a week ago, right? So like now it's like $40,000. So hopefully the sooner the better. But that being said, where I'm pulling is the question where I'm pulling additional capital and what I think I can pace it at.
Yeah, absolutely. Realistically, on an ongoing basis, each year, what do you think's realistic for you, Papa?
Yeah, man. So we've got, my wife just got a promotion, and we've got our expenses pretty well figured out under her salary, and she just got like an extra. It was a big promotion, right? So she just got like an extra, like after taxes, a little bit over $1,000 more. So we should be able to save that conservatively. And I am right now in the middle of building my business. And because I've been starting my business from zero the last 2 years, we've kind of all got it figured out there. So I expect to make this year in the range of realistically $70,000 take home EBITDA kind of stuff for myself on the conservative end. And I really, really think that I should be able to save all that stuff, right? So let's call it really conservatively an extra 50 grand.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So now we have the framework to be able to play a little bit, right? So as we look at this, we've got our why, we've got our 7,000. We know it's going to take 9 doors at a minimum, 40 out of the gate, and then 50 ongoing. Mm-hmm. So really, how do we best implement that? So this is where traditionally, going back to his question earlier, how does this look like? What is the homework? This is where we get a chance to kind of to tear it apart together. So if I zero these cells out, so we're zeros across the board.
Hey, Stewie, I hate to pause you here, but some folks are saying it's a little bit blurry. I think it'd help if you zoom in as well, zooming in a little bit, and just kind of those sections that we're focusing on. I think it'll help because sometimes people can get scared by all these numbers, especially if they're blurry.
And real quick, while you're doing that, Lee Bishop asks, does the $800 per month that you kind of stipulated of a property that you own, does that take into account the 3% vacancy and the 4% maintenance or whatever the maintenance number is?
Yeah, great question, Lee. So that's just going to be after fixed expenses, my friend. So no variable, no maintenance, no vacancy. Traditionally, that's what you're going to be looking at. And that's the way we calculate it on the pro formas as well. You guys will have total return calculations with the maintenance and the vacancy built in. And then you're going to have a monthly net cash flow after fixed expenses. And we really lay it out that way. So you guys, again, have a realistic expectation as to what you can expect when we pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, guys, everything, went great. We collected our rent, no maintenance items. Then I know I'm getting my $800 a month. But clearly that doesn't take into account the month that we do have a maintenance item or the month that we don't collect that rent for whatever reason. So good question, but when we're planning, it's going to be just on the 800 for a typical month, not the rainy day fund per se.
Yeah, great. And we're getting feedback from Lee also saying that it looks better. So this is good.
Okay, good. Good. All right. So I've got it zoomed in a little bit. Essentially, guys, you'll notice here that, when we look at this, Pablo, and for you, I know we went conventional. That was kind of the route to go. Some folks will utilize leverage inside of a tax qualified account, like an IRA, a solo 401k, things of that nature. We can have non-recourse. We can also have cash purchases. It just kind of depends at the end of the day as far as what that looks like. For you, knowing that you went conventional right out of the gate and likely conventional ongoing, that'll be kind of the sandbox we'll play in if you're okay with that.
Yeah, man. Listen, I'm in love with leverage. I've learned that on the show.
Especially when it's this cheap, guys. I mean, there's no mystery there. Okay, so when we look at this, if I've got 40,000 initially, right, it's pretty clear that I'm only going to be able to buy one property right out of the gate with that. Okay, so in year one, I'm going to allocate of my 9, for a conventionally financed purchase that's either 20 or 25% down plus my closing costs. I know comfortably I can get there. On an ongoing basis, though, what are prices going to do here in Jacksonville, Pablo?
They're going up right now.
Going up, right? So that means that the average down payment that we're going to have to allocate for is going to do the same thing. So again, as a team, we've kind of settled in on $50,000 a door is a good target number when we're doing this plan, because of the fact that it's going to encompass, lower price point homes as well as higher price point homes. We're going to kind of settle into that mid-range. So if I've got $50,000 per year to invest, again, this is a pretty simple math problem, right? I'm going to be able to continue to go one a year until I get to year 8, right? And then in year 8, I've hit my goal. Oop, year 9, excuse me. Okay, I've hit my goal here. Let me back these guys out. Find nothing in year 10. So I've got my 9 properties. And that's, again, very comfortably, Pablo. So that's assuming nothing else positive happens in your life whatsoever between now and year 9.
Sure. And I was going to say, right, like for me, this is year 2 of a business that is a conservative estimate. I think I'm going to be doing better than that, right? Like I know, I think my wife's going to get more raises. She's super talented, right?
Yeah.
The other piece is, on, so if I'm going down this path, at what point can I realistically be thinking, what about a cash out refi, right? Like, what about taking out equity, stuff like that?
Yep, absolutely. Because all those things need to be a part of it. So when we look at this, scenario 1 is uber conservative, right? Just assuming that nothing changes, plain Jane vanilla, I'm squirreling away 50 grand a year and I'm buying a house every year for the next 9 years, right? If we look at scenario 2, let me go back over here. Okay, then we kind of get to play the game of what if, right? And this is where it gets fun, because we get to brainstorm, we get to think about what can potentially happen and what are the impacts of things happening to the positive, right? When we look at this. So we're probably going to be the same in year 1. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I just I'm trying to think from somebody who maybe hasn't seen this at all. And I was wondering if you could spend a few minutes just breaking down row 22 and row 23, right? Total annual positive cash flow and the total annual equity gain. Could we talk about what Pablo has just created over those 9 years and just kind of set that stage first?
Yeah, we can. And what I was going to do is obviously get a chance to do this relative to scenario 1 and 2. But here's the really neat thing, Pablo. When you're looking at this, right, I can see, yes, I'm buying one house a year, but what does that really mean for me, right? I think that's the big thing when we're talking about the driver. We're talking about the 2 biggies in cash flow, and we're talking about home price appreciation over that same time frame, right? So you can see each home that I add, I'm having this healthy uptick in terms of my cash flow over that rolling 10-year time frame, to the point that even though I've bought 9 houses in 9 years, I've got $115,000 in cash flow over that time period by itself, right? And you can see the breakdown year over year. The appreciation piece, and Greg, I know you beat up Cleveland and a couple of other markets. This is really where it gets awesome, guys. When we look at the impact of appreciation in this market year over year, and Pablo, I know you and I personally have talked about, the beauty of this working for you and working against you. Here, you can clearly see over that 10-year time period, I mean, this is almost $600,000, guys, a little over, right, in total benefit just from 2 of the 4 profit centers that we have direct control over. So I think it's really important to recognize these 2. And when we play what if in scenario 2, it's really neat to see how that appreciation working for you and that cash flow working for you can be impacted by just making a few small tweaks. You follow me there?
Yeah, man, I'm following you there. We just touched on the benefit of home price appreciation working for you. Let's not lose that time frame. What do you mean by how can it work against you, home price appreciation?
Yeah, so I mean, if you just think about it at its most basic form, guys, I mean, it's beautiful, it's powerful over time, right? It's effectively compounding interest in real estate that's working for us and being magnified, by probably a 4 times multiple when we're utilizing leverage and putting 25% down, or even more if we're putting 20% down. All of that is good, right? But then we talk about the scenario that we're in today, and really what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. If anybody's been following interest rates, the 10-year treasury jumping 40 basis points, give or take, which is causing, mortgage rates to have a little spike up for the moment, putting a little fear out there, right, as to what's going to happen to this opportunity, not only in terms of purchasing power via leverage, but also, we're looking at Jacksonville going up, 7 to 9% likely this year, guys. So if I'm buying a house today at 200,000, right, and I buy it at the end of the year, it's going to be a different return profile, different price point. Interest rates could potentially be different. So we're just seeing an environment where we have a little bit of uncertainty. And I think it's forcing people to realize, the opportunity that is at hand. Because if you do wait, it could potentially work against you very, very quickly. So I like to tell people when we're looking at a plan, especially if we get somebody that comes to me and says, hey, Mike, I'm looking to buy 3 properties in my first year via our plan. I'm thinking I'll buy 1 now, 1 in the summer, 1 in the fall. Well, I mean, it's great, but right, we've got appreciation working against us if the market itself is going up 7 to 9%, let alone what the interest rate conversation is. Plus, do you really want to go through a loan process 3 times versus going through it once? So I usually tell people if that's in the cards, and you can accelerate your plan, it's definitely going to be in your best interest to do so.
Okay. And one of the other things that jumps out to me as folks are going through this, and many are seeing this for the very first time, right? We're looking at what we're trying to engineer together, financially engineer together, and we're seeing that positive cash flow is incredibly important. But if you invest in a growth market and you hold on for a full market cycle, that return from that positive cash flow actually pales in comparison to what you may see from appreciation and equity gain perspective. And this message shouldn't be construed to say that we are here to speculate and invest solely for property appreciation. But what it's meant to provide for everybody is that we can't ignore home price appreciation, because that's what most rental property investors tend to do. They focus solely on cash flow. Things like this buying plan give people the full perspective of how it can relate to your goals. And I think it's incredibly important what you're doing, Mike, because it helps people see not only how can we reach their goals, but specifically, where's it going to come from? Is it going to come from positive cash flow? Is it going to come from home price appreciation? And I know you're about to get into scenario 2 here, so I won't steal your thunder, but this is so different than what other people see prior to investing in a rental property.
Yeah, and just to contextualize that, Mike, can you scoot it over a little bit so we see the end of the spreadsheet to the right? Yep. So, we're talking about a net gain of $380,000 in appreciation, right, over 10 years versus the gain of $115,000 versus cash flow, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
that's what I was highlighting there. And this is built on assumptions, right? This is meant to give a picture, right? Like Mike was talking about, there are a whole lot of variables that can happen between now and then, but this is built on the assumption that you're going to be buying and holding for a full market cycle, right? And that's part of the value. That's why we sit here and talk about this every single week, right? Rental property investing is best served when you're investing for a full market cycle. And things like this help put this tangibly into perspective, right? We can't ignore home price appreciation. Look at that. If things hold true in the Jacksonville market, which have repeated themselves for market cycles and market cycles now, if that repeats itself for the next market cycle, This is the type of gain that you get from investing in a growth market like Jacksonville versus another market. You guys know who I beat up on the most, right? It's our friend, right? Cleveland's not a growth market. Jacksonville is. This helps to clearly explain the potential profit there.
Makes a lot of sense. So real quick, we got a couple of good questions here. It's 122. So I don't know if we're going to go much further beyond 130. Does it make sense to jump into questions? Maybe summarize what this other scenario is going to look like and then ask a couple questions?
Yeah, I think that's probably best, Pablo. So if we look at it, I mean, simply put, right, if we take the same amount of capital and then play what if, right? So if we're in a scenario where you're talking about what happens if my business takes off, what happens if I do have the ability to do a cash out refinance, what if I have, a movement from a job or I'm selling another asset? Let's just assume we don't buy any additional houses. We're allocating the same amount in 450,000, but we can just do it a little faster. Let's say year 5, I've got the ability to pick up an extra house because I can do a cash out refi. And then Pablo, let's just say here, right, we're able to buy 2 houses a year because your business has really taken off, right? Then we're in a scenario where we're still at 9 properties. We've still allocated 450,000. We've shaved 2 years off the plan in totality. And you can see the difference here, right? We've got a little 14 grand in cash flow, give or take. And then we've got another 50,000 here. So we didn't do anything different in terms of the big picture number of houses, the total number of capital or total amount of capital allocate towards it. We just did it in a more efficient fashion. So that's really what we try to relate and talk about that opportunity that's in front of us that's going to really work for us in terms of, that long-term full market cycle buy and hold. But at the same token, while we're still in that accumulation phase, if we've got the ability to get after it, it's definitely going to make sense to do so. So that's what I wanted to share with you. We can pop over to questions. I think that probably makes sense with limited time.
Cool. Yeah. Listen, for the record, I'm hoping to accelerate it year 2. But anyways, that's
there we go. Love it.
Roger Evans asks, what about the tax basis at the time of your market checkout?
Oh, as far as the actual sale, is that, I think, what he's referencing to, probably?
That's what it sounds like, Roger, if you want to contextualize in the chat, but that's what that sounds like. Greg, looks like you might.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, it's taxes vary for everybody, right? I mean, it's not only your personal situation, but it's also, what's going on around us. And oftentimes we get people through a variety of estate planning strategies, whether it's through, retitling the asset to be able to leave to heirs in a more tax efficient fashion. If it's the ability to utilize a 1031 exchange to defer that taxable event, but still physically sell the property. Host of different things, but candidly, guys, to try to speculate where the tax brackets will fall 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if you've made a lot of money, I think that's a really beautiful problem to have, and we'll figure that part out when we get there.
Yeah, more options with rental property investing to effectively tax plan than pretty much any other asset class out there.
Okay,
agreed.
So talking about taxes, right? Vincent Gomez asks, what are the tax benefits? So can you talk through a little bit of what the actual tax benefits are as you're going through this process and building this portfolio as well?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the overall tax benefits, the 2 biggies that stand out, right, are the ability to depreciate the asset, as well as the ability to have the expenses relative to income offset each other, typically on an annual basis. So first of all, I'm no CPA, clearly, but at the end of the day, that's what people are doing. And when we factor in total return and we're looking at those 4 profit centers, net cash flow is 1, appreciation is 1, principal pay down is 1, and then tax savings through standard depreciation is 1. So we actually build that into the evaluation already. So when we're looking at the total ROI on these properties, it's going to be there. But the end goal, I think, for most folks is that from an income perspective, you're as close to net neutral as possible.
There you go. Dean Curry has a question. Does JWB accept? He actually has 2 questions that we can answer back to back. Dean Curry asks, does JWB accept voucher programs for rentals? And is there a discount on management fees for multiple assets purchased from JWB?
Sometimes, and yes. So as far as the Section 8, we've had kind of a mixed stance on it over the years. Before I started, we were a little bit open. And then just as I was getting started, Greg, I think probably 2016, 2017, we kind of changed our stance where we'll still entertain it with our bigger properties, usually a 5-bedroom home. All of our smaller properties, 2 beds, 3 beds, 4 beds, we don't. The risk return isn't necessarily where we believe it needs to be for the best interest of our clients. So that's question one. Question two, absolutely. You've got breakpoints. So as you grow your portfolio with us, guys, property management fees start out at 10% for everybody, drop at 9% once you hit 5 properties, and then to 8% when you're at 10 properties or more. So we kind of dangle that carrot, and obviously, appreciate the trust for that level of business when you get to 5 and even 10 properties or more.
Is that incorporated into the spreadsheet that you showed? Like, is that drop in management fees incorporated into the rising return once it hits? Okay, so we're looking at a little bit of extra.
So that'll be even better. Yep.
Under promise, over deliver. I know how you guys grow. All right, so there is somebody named Marilyn that I have to assume is Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida.
Home of the manatees.
Who's asking? So do you take the approximate $600,000 and subtract $450,000 for the capital outlay to get approximately $250,000 profit over 9 years? And then she corrected to about $160,000 profit over 9 years. Does that make sense?
Yes. So that's going to be right, because it's total capital outlay relative to benefits received. So when we're calculating that return, essentially, guys, we're going to take all of the money that you put into it, physically your money, not the bank's money, not anybody else's money. How much money did you invest into these properties in terms of down payment and closing costs? And then we factor the benefits to that, right? My cash flow, my tax savings, my principal pay down, and my appreciation if we're factoring it in. So absolutely, if you take that the initial amount invested, so if we had the 250 in total or the 150 in total, we're going to look at the total benefit divided into that to get our percentage gain.
Awesome.
And I'm not exactly sure what the numbers, I'm not looking at them right now, but that total gain from cash flow and equity gain is in addition, right? That's not saying that you got some of that from your initial capital outlay. So what Mike's talking about is how you're looking at your return on investment, but just keep in mind that those gains right there are new gains from your cash flow and new gains from the equity, which is being gained by the property appreciating. So
yeah, it's a division problem versus a subtraction problem. I think she had mentioned subtraction, which is not what we're doing. We're trying to look at benefits relative to initial investment, not benefits less original investment. That would be the incorrect way to do it.
Got it. So if I'm explaining it to my friend that doesn't know anything about rental income properties, capital outlay is the amount of money that I actually put down, right? Okay.
Yep.
Making sure for my friend. And then we are not saying, this is the profit. What you're saying is the multiplier of that much is what you're looking at, not the outright cash. Right? 'Cause you're saying,
Correct. So everything that you received relative to everything that you put into it, what is that percentage, right? So if I had $800,000 in benefit and I had, $250,000 invested, take my 800 into my 250 and then divide it by number of years invested, and that's how you're going to get your annualized, essentially.
all right, little finance and math lesson out here. Thank you, guys. Marilyn also asked, what's the discount on 3 houses? And Lee also brought up to mention that there's a discount for buying 3 houses at a time.
Yeah, so when we look at it, property management is one area that we do have programs at either 5 or 10, but also for anybody that's buying 3 or more, we have what's called a 3-pack incentive. So we're able to give you a $500 credit per door towards tenant placement fees initially to help offset those costs. So again, not factored into returns, only going to help to boost it a little bit, and naturally an incentive again to knock it all out at once if the plan is to do it anyway.
Sweet, I like it. Medj Garcia has a question. We are limited to 10 houses under our name. What strategy can we take to buy more properties?
Yeah, Medj, hello. Great to hear from her. Yeah, there's a couple of different things that you can do. Once you get to 10 conventional loans, if you have a spouse that has income and can qualify, there's another 10 loans potentially. So just be careful when you're applying for financing initially. I know a lot of people, my wife and I included, we do everything together, But at the same token, that's a big mistake, right? Because it gobbles up a loan spot for me and a loan spot for her. So if you have a spouse that can qualify, that's thing one. If not, really two additional options. You could either pay off existing debt to free up a loan spot, which is a lot harder to do. We do have preferred lending teammates as well that have what they call portfolio products. They can still be very competitive. So I would say just pick up the phone, call, talk to us there as far as, what makes sense. But there are lenders out there that will lend past the 10 conventional Fannie Freddie spot.
Awesome. Guys, we're at 1:33. Do we need to cut this off, or do y'all need to go somewhere or anything like that? Or can we answer a couple more questions?
Your show,
I'm
bro.
okay for a little bit.
All right, cool. He's okay, folks.
Yeah,
All right,
we can go for a little bit.
All right. So, by the way, I just want to point of clarity. Meg is talking about getting loans on these properties. You can buy an infinity properties if you're just paying for it with cash, right?
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
So that's for financing. So Mike Foster has I don't know if it's a comment or a question here. Another major savings, as long as Congress leaves it alone, is leaving the properties to heirs who can then avoid taxes on depreciation recapture, and also tax savings via step up in property bases. I feel like we just touched on this very recently on the show. Can you guys kind of like recontextualize and explain what all that means?
Go for it, Stewie. They heard it from me last show.
Go ahead, Greg. Oh. Yeah, the biggest is the step up in basis. So it almost acts like a stock in that regard, guys. So if I bought a property at $200,000 today, we flash forward, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and that's doubled or tripled in value, right? The real question, or the healthy fear is what kind of tax time bomb am I passing to my heirs, to my kids, my grandkids? So in this particular case, you do have the ability to do what's called a step up in basis. So if you leave it to the kiddos, in that particular case, when you pass, they'll capture the value on your date of passing. And whatever that value is on your date of passing, at that point, that's the new cost basis. That's the new floor. So they call it step up because you started at 200 and now you're up here, right? And they sold their own between what the basis, but not originally bought in. So very.
I think we're getting a few bits and pieces of what Stewie is saying. I'll bring it on. So I'll bring it on home for us. That step up in basis basically makes sure that you don't pass that tax time bomb on to the next generation. Basically, the value of your property steps up in basis, which means that if your heirs would sell that property, they wouldn't pay taxes on the gain that has been accumulated over so many years. So it's an incredible tax advantage, and we are certainly hoping that Congress does not change that.
So then, again, explaining for my friends, that means that instead of paying for, you inherit this thing, you're not paying for that $600,000 gain. You're just paying for the cash flow and the profits that you make from the moment that you get it, as opposed to the other way around, right?
Well, maybe. There's too much to know really to talk about the tax consequences, but it might be a very real situation. You may still be able to take depreciation from a tax perspective on those properties, which would offset the taxable cash flow as well. So there's a real possibility it's even better than what you just said there, Pablo. But yes, at a basis, the way it is now, the step up in basis happens when you pass it along to your heirs. So you are not passing the taxable consequences from the gains from property appreciation.
Got it. And Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida,
home of the manatees,
asked, does that have to be a relative or any heir?
I don't think it's relative specific, guys. I mean, again, I'm not a CPA, but I'm pretty sure it's whoever you're transferring it to at that point. You've got the ability to have that step of basis. But I'd check just to be triple sure.
Okay, cool. Florencio Escano has a question. Using NRL IRA, I'm assuming that's a non-recourse loan IRA. How much is needed for the initial investment for a rental property?
Yeah, if we go non-recourse, typically you're looking at 50% down and about 4.5% for closing costs. Oftentimes they'll ask you to have a few dollars in reserves, right? So if we looked at, an average property, let's call it at 170,000, right? Just take 50% of that and then factor in, what do you think, Greg? $3,000 in reserves probably, plus that 4.5% closing costs. Yeah.
There you go. Meg Garcia has another question. Can we buy properties under our LLC and it will not be under our name? This is for the having 10 plus properties that she originally brought up.
Yeah, if you're buying a property outright, guys, I mean the rules are pretty wide open, right? You're buying it, so however you want to title it, if it's in an LLC or a land trust or a real estate privacy trust, absolutely you can do that. Financing, it gets finicky. Typically, they won't finance in the name of an LLC. We've got a few that will, but typically the interest rate is a much heftier tag at that point, so you have to be cognizant of it. But it's possible. But definitely, if you're not financing, the world's your oyster.
Awesome. And Nadeem Shah has a question here. What if the heir doesn't want to sell the property and continue paying the mortgage? Do they still have to pay taxes?
Not until they liquidate. So if they're holding the asset, again, they have their new floor, right? That step up in basis, like Greg was talking about, and then from there, only when they liquidate the property is when they're going to have a taxable event at that point.
All right, guys, we went a little bit over today, but Mike, I feel like we just witnessed the rise of a social media superstar. For the record, I think this is the platform for which your face and your knowledge is going to be known throughout the interwebs. Because I thought you killed it, man. I thought it was really, really helpful. You can tell you're looking good, right? You're freshly tanned from the tournament. It's a good start, man. How'd you feel being on the show today? You feel comfortable?
Yeah, no, it was great, man. It was great. You guys were a lot of fun. So no, love helping. And like I said, it's probably the first of many. We'll see you guys again in a year.
Yeah, man. I can't wait for that. And listen, we want to thank everybody for joining us, right? I want to iterate that if you want to download the calculator, go to jwbroi.com. If you want to hang out with us throughout the week, go to jwbfacebookgroup.com. Join the Facebook group. We've got 2,400 people in there. It's awesome. If you want to now, we just went to the long-term like the long-term process. If you want to see the micro process, you want to see a property being broke down and going, dollars and cents and blocking and tackling into the equation. Join us on Thursday for the JWB, where Greg and I break it down. We'll put an actual piece of inventory out there, and we get to mess with the numbers on a property level instead of a portfolio level. Hope that you can join us. We're so grateful that we still have 46 people on the call. Mike, this is an applause to you, right? Like normally when we have calls that are this long, you see the numbers really start drop down. We haven't lost anybody, right? We got 46 people here on this call. It's a Tuesday. It's not easy to take an hour out of your day. So we're super, super grateful that you would come here, acknowledge the value, be part of the community. Florencio, great to have you. Lee, great to have you. Nadeem, great to have you. Margaret Smith, thank you. Marilyn, Everett, everybody that's commenting. Anthony, Dita, thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna leave it up to you, Greg, to give the final goodbye here. Oh, I forgot to say, Thursday, we have a big announcement too. It's not just the property of the week. Tell them, Greg.
Yes, we are announcing the raffle winner on Thursday for the JWB Cares donation and raffle. So for all of you who've contributed, thank you so much. You will definitely want to be there on Thursday. That is when we're going to announce the winner. And the winner is taking home over $8,000. We raised over $16,000 in this raffle. Thank you to everybody here. So we'll see you on Thursday. But I did not want to leave without saying thank you to Mike for being here. Thank you to Pablo as well. I have so many thank yous to give. Mike, I just thought today was just a perfect demonstration of why investing with JWB is nothing like hiring a property manager, right? We do property management. Yep. There is no property manager in the world that is going to have that level of conversation that you just had with Pablo. And I'm so excited that we were able to break that down and to see a real life example, right? Pablo hadn't shared this information with Mike before. And this was truly the same exact conversation that we get to have. So I'm so thankful for both of you. Pablo, thank you for sharing and being open to sharing.
Yeah, man.
Your information, your experience here. I mean, this is not constructed ahead of time. And I'm just so thankful to both of you. This has been just a really wonderful experience. And I know everybody really, really benefited. So super appreciative of you both and looking forward to the Thursday show. Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
Have a great week.